Well, thank you all for joining us on today's show. We've got a special guest coming up here, and that's none other than Jane Leavy. Matt and I are going to kind of take a peek here at what happens with the Rays' new ownership, and we'll get into Jane's book, Make Me Commissioner. And when she joins, we're trying to, while we're trying to have a conversation, we're also watching the Yankees game. So if you hear certain roars or groans, it could be because of that. So let's get started. All righty. Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck. I am Mark Carbon, and with me, of course, is Mr. Matt Germain, and we've been playing ping pong, man. It's just been crazy. The Rays franchise does now have a new owner. It's official, and they unveiled themselves this past Tuesday at George Steinbrenner Field. I went to the press conference. I was just stunned at how many media people were there. They had like 6 rows deep of media people, cameras everywhere. But it was quite the event. And now we know who these 3 owners are: Bill Cosgrove, Pat Zalupski, and Ken Babby. So welcome to Tampa, boys and girls.
What were your thoughts on tone and the owners that you just named individually? What was your feeling, your gut feeling about the trio?
I tell you, I was so happy because I got a different vibe a little bit from each one. There was a positive vibe. Mm-hmm. But Bill Cosgrove, he seems a little playful and somebody who enjoys baseball and talked a little bit about playing as a kid. Patrick Zalupski, he seems like the guy you want as far as working with real estate and development. That's his life. Mm-hmm. And then you got Ken Babby. And this is a guy who grew up at his father's knee in Camden Yards. His dad was the general counsel for the Orioles. And what he's achieved too with, you and I've talked about this before, the Akron Rubber Ducks and the Jacksonville team, the Jumbo Shrimp. I felt like this conglomerate of these 3 personalities is what it's going to take to make things work. So I was encouraged. There's so many times I look across baseball and I see ownership that's either one, maybe somebody like, and this isn't to slam them, it just shows the mentality. Somebody who's come from high fund type program or an Ivy School program, and they see from one perspective. I felt like these 3 owners will be able to bring something together and see a much deeper version of what baseball can be than Stu was able to himself.
Yeah. I didn't have any alarm bells ringing. I think they answered all their questions fairly honestly and transparently. Like if they didn't have the answer and they weren't going to answer it, they explained why they weren't going to. Everything made a lot of sense. They noted like all the usual suspects were there. So you had Colleen, you had Mark, so all of them got their one question in each. So they hit on all the primary people that they're going to be answering questions to for the foreseeable future. I think really you have to be encouraged if you're a Rays fan and you're listening to everything going on. These seem like the kind of people that will ask a lot of questions from the fans, get feedback, and probably put a lot of things into play that the fans recommended. And I think it took Stu a long time to get to that level, right?
Yeah.
Of getting that, right? I think what you're going to see fans asking for is to reopen the upper levels of the Trop, having more flexible ticket packages, having more, events around the game, not just the game itself, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think you're going to see them really play up. And he mentioned it, like right as spring training comes through and the season's about to start, you're going to hear about all these initiatives that they're doing to change it. I was most curious about the question that they asked about refurbishing the Trop or how long it could end up being in play. And they talked about investments that they're going to make in the Trop. And I'm wondering just to what level they're going to do that. Well, what's your inclination on that part?
Well, they indicated that it is going to be even greater experience than we had the last time we were at the Trop. So I don't know what that's all going to be. They complimented Ken Welch and the folks from St. Pete several times, Mayor Ken Welch, and they said like they were working on some pieces together. I think they know they have to get it right first. And if they don't deliver on what's being said now, I don't know where they will be. I mean, this is the thing nobody wants to talk about. But with the CBA coming up and everything else to boot, you better have your goodwill right now because we don't know what's going to happen in a year.
Right.
And I think whether that's going to happen or not, their commitment to this area and to their own investment is to really make the Trop, go off with a bang. So we'll see.
One of the first things I think they could do that would attract a lot of interest is to drop the parking prices. Like honestly, they
Yeah.
just, whether they make it $2, like a nominal amount, or $5 or something really tiny that they can promote and just welcome the fans there and say, listen, come back, have a look at what we're doing, yada, yada, yada. That should be part of their packages because if you're going to make that drive and then you're going to drive back, if you are coming in from Tampa or elsewhere, you want to have the best financial experience, not just the best experience of watching baseball. So I think that's the easiest low-hanging fruit that they can kind of tackle because the Rays did do a decent job of heightening the experience in the Trop. They had the light thing with the roof going on. They had, a lot of investments that they made for the standing areas and whatever. I think they got to understand how to add a little bit of flexibility on that front. And like I said, the ticket packages were starting to improve.
Yeah.
Uh, the grit and glow were really awesome. I don't know how you top that one. So there's a lot of positives for them to build on and to kind of grow from there. So I'll be curious to see what they come up with. I know they'll get really creative and think of things that we can never think of. But overall, I think the other interesting things, and I put it out in Blue Sky, was the budget will stay fairly similar until they get improvements some way, somehow. Yeah, whether it be attendance or whether it be, other ways or other avenues that they get funding from. But to be honest, Mark, that still doesn't mean that they're going to shy away from getting free agents because they have literally no commitments in 2027 or 2028. There is zero on the books for 2027, 2028. So they have a clean slate to bring in whoever they want as a core piece or as, to sign or to an extension. So yeah, I'm curious to see how the rest of the offseason goes and how aggressive they let that's the other part I was going to say actually was I love the fact that they're leaving the reins to Kevin and Eric. And they said that over and over again. They are not getting involved with the baseball operations side of it. They're leaving that to Eric and Kevin. And if ever they do get involved in the baseball operations side, they said that they should have somebody basically take the reins away. Right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I felt that they were committed to that. Now, I had the opportunity to meet with Ken Babby a week ago with a few folks at the Tampa Baseball Museum. And he made it very clear that they're going to be going out in the community and they're going to be listening.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be taking in, what the community has to say. And he reiterated that too the other day at that owners press conference. From what I've seen of this guy, I can't imagine that he's anything but authentic. The genuine article. If it's coming out of his mouth, he believes it. He's not blowing any sunshine up here. And his commitment to success for the Rays is probably just about as strong as his commitment to making baseball fun again. Hey, should I get a hat like a make baseball fun again? Okay, we'll figure that out later on. I need a red cap, but it's he is going to be look into those type of things. I hope that we were going to be able to have Jane Leavy on here today and talk about some of the things because she's got some great plans on making baseball fun again and being a commissioner. Maybe we'll get here. Oh, it looks like this. Hang on, hang on. Here we go. Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, I
Hey,
didn't
hey,
expect it. Look at that.
hey,
Oh my
Jane.
God, I'm so sorry. I've been like sitting here punching numbers like crazy.
I'm
I
sorry,
thought I
Jane.
thought you were gone for the Yankees right now. Like I
Yeah.
can't believe you're here, to be honest.
Well, I am. I just turned it on. I have no idea what's going on because I wasn't watching. I was pounding on numbers trying to get on here.
Oh,
I'm
I'm sorry.
sorry.
All
No.
good.
Is this still okay?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
you kidding? Of
Okay.
course.
Oh,
We're
great.
because
Uh,
we've just been talking amongst ourselves.
what's on your cap?
Oh,
Can't see.
that's Roberto Clemente.
Oh, it certainly is. Yes, right.
Yes, I had the good fortune of meeting Luis Roberto Clemente and Tom Purcell a few weeks back, and they gave me this. It's very kind of them. Very nice.
Oh,
Very,
that's wonderful.
well, let's go ahead and introduce you to the folks on the show.
The field behind me that I'm looking at.
Oh, what you're seeing here,
Yeah.
that is Al Lopez Field. Al
Is
Lopez,
that? Oh, no kidding.
the
That's the one.
Godfather.
Okay, okay. Yep. Gotcha.
Yeah, it's now part of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers parking lot.
Hmm?
Yes, we
Uh,
revere our old architecture, don't we?
Gosh, dear, I tell you what, Jane. I mean, I
Yes.
had the good pleasure of meeting a friend of yours this past week,
Who
Janet
is?
Marie. She
Oh,
she
yeah.
was here in town and talk about architecture. We'll talk about her in a minute. First, let me introduce you.
Okay.
Hey, folks, this is Jane, and let me see make sure if I get your last name wrong, slap me. Jane Levy.
You got it right. Thank
She's-
you.
Oh gosh, I didn't like Zalupski or something like that, but
Like Schlittler?
oh
Well,
yeah.
how's he doing? Does anybody know?
Let's see. Get the game day up there, Matt. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, it's 1-1 in the fourth. Sorry.
Oh, so he's not doing too bad. Who's
No.
pitching? Is it a bullpen game?
It started as such for the Blue Jays for sure, and then they ended up going to. Hang on one sec. They had Varlin, Flaherty, and Dominguez. So yeah, full bullpen.
I
Yeah.
hate that. I hate that. I'm sorry. Just
No, I
no,
get it.
it's
I
not the
mean,
way. Okay.
no, no, I get it. I mean, you're at a championship game and all this, and you have a bullpen day. Uh, there are so many things. First, let me say, talking with Jane, read her book, and I love it. Make me commissioner. And Matt and I were talking before you got here. We've been talking that way about ourselves for years.
Years. Huh?
So somebody who's actually got some depth to them and love to actually, see what they're going to do.
I don't
And
know if it's depth or chutzpah.
Yeah, that's right.
well, you bring it, kid. I tell you that much. I appreciate it. Wow. I want to say there's one moment I want to start with from your book,
Okay.
and it's you, Joe Torre, and Sandy Koufax.
Yep.
And you're having breakfast out on a balcony. And is it Cooperstown?
Yes, it's the Otesaga on the lake in Cooperstown. It's the holy of holy places, other than the hall itself. Actually, it may be more important than the hall itself. And for that weekend, nobody's allowed in there. You have to have a combination of badges and bracelets. It's ridiculous. It actually kind of makes me a little bit queasy the way it's managed. Like these guys
Yeah.
are like priceless antiques. I mean, some of them are, but that you have to take care of and under lock and key. So it was in the Hotel Otesaga, and it was the induction weekend. It was 2019. It was induction weekend for Mariano Rivera, and so of course Joe was there because of having won 4 championships with and because of Mariano, and Sandy was there because he's Sandy. He doesn't need a reason to be anywhere, but he does make an effort to go, particularly if there's somebody he's a friend of or a teammate. And he's one of those old-fashioned guys who refers to any Dodger. He's a teammate.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter, whether live, dead, played on the same team. It does not matter. And I revere that feeling that players used to have about
Yeah.
the uniform. So anyway, we have breakfast, and I was intimidated. I was thrilled and intimidated, and there are many rules at the Holy of Holies. One is that you never ask for an autograph. Okay, fine. I wasn't planning to ask for any autographs. And people are doing business and whispering things to each other, but you're not supposed to, as a reporter, be doing interviews. I didn't bring a pad, I didn't bring a pen, I didn't bring a tape recorder, nothing. I just was there and gaga. And so they start talking about the game, today's game, which is clearly not their game.
Yeah.
And it's clear in everything they say that it's not the game they played. And so they start talking. And the one thing I remember Sandy saying really clearly was, and half the time the pitchers don't know where the ball is going. And Joe responding, it was a very brief conversation, but it was as if they were speaking in baseball tongues. It was like, and Joe pretending he's holding a bat and leading forward like this and saying something about how they have the reason they have to reach across or this or that. So it was like this little colloquy between Hall of Famers,
Yeah.
who of course had not only, were friends from Brooklyn. I mean, they're both from Brooklyn. Not that they knew each other in Brooklyn. They didn't. But they're from Brooklyn. And that's like saying he's a teammate. uh, so, but I can't recall exactly what they said. I was too shocked and, awed to like be able to focus. And really, it was very quickly, but it was like I had the sense that they had unlocked the secret of what was different today. And it didn't take very long. They finished their little conversation. And Joe said, hard to watch. Sandy said, I don't watch. And I basically just said to myself, wow, that's the story. That's the story I have to tell. And of course, it got interrupted because soon there was the pandemic, and that took a couple of years off everybody's lives.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that jokingly, because of course it ended so many lives. And I was fooling around trying to figure out ways to do it. I had looked for a star, a person whose life story I could add to the biographies I'd already written about Koufax and Mantle and Ruth. Couldn't find anybody. And that too persuaded me that this was the story. Why can't you think of anybody in baseball to write about? Well, I have a couple of rules that made it harder, I admit. One is that I won't do the same subject that a friend has done. Whether I think they've done it really well or not done it really well, I just won't do it. I won't compete with friends. And the second reason is if I think somebody's done something so well that it can't be equaled, there's no new version, oh, I'm going to retell the story of Ty Cobb and now he's a nice guy, right? I mean, Charlie Learson did that. And I don't know if he's right or he's wrong, but it just seems, that everybody who takes on a subject to redo it has to find a new angle. And, I don't think anybody's going to write something about Joe DiMaggio that equals what Richard Ben Kramer wrote about Joe DiMaggio. So when you take out all those people from the list of baseball greats who might be suitable subjects, there weren't any, right? Actually, my agent suggested doing Mariano Rivera, and then I had a new rule. No, I don't speak Spanish, and I don't think it's ethical to write a biography about somebody whose mother tongue you can't understand. You can't get the subtleties. You can't get anything, right? So I ruled that one out. And so more and more I was convinced this was the story to tell. And when we came back from the pandemic, I started doing that. And you recall that after that first season, when baseball reopened after 21, there were lots of headlines. Baseball's dead. Baseball's dying. Baseball's broken. And that again convinced me that this was the story to tell. Then they hired. I've confused the timeline here. Theo was hired. I think it was January 2021 to be what I like to call the czar of making baseball fun again.
Yeah.
And and that was another thing that said, okay, this really is the story. They know it's the story. So I started working and working, and without boring people about publishing and lead time on what you need. But there is no way once they started testing the rules that they ultimately imposed in 2023. There's no way in God's green earth that I could get a book done between the time Theo was hired and the new rules went into effect.
Right.
So I pivoted and basically decided, okay, instead, what I'll do is I'll spend 2023 going to every place in baseball, every level I can find, um, to see how it's doing. Are the new rules working? Do they solve the problems? And to what extent, you know, does something else need to be done? And then of course, who's going to do it? At which point I decided when Rob announced, when Commissioner Manfred, who I jokingly refer to as my predecessor, announced that he would give up the perch at the end of his current term in 2029, I said, why not me? I'll do it. I'll be commissioner. It's
Yeah.
not, it's kind of a tough job if you do it seriously. So he has my empathy there. It's not an easy job.
Well, he's got to keep 30 people happy. I mean, the thing of it is he's the commissioner, but there's these 30 owners who pretty much, I imagine, dictate most of what's going to happen across MLB. And man, I don't want to be doing all the talking here, but it's what he and I both have looked at owners and said they seem to control so much of the game, but do they have the feel for the game? I think with our new owners that we have, and looking at the other day, Cosgrove, Zalupski, and Babby, we were just talking before he came. There is like a triumvirate of energy that comes from these people. They're not a one mindset. This isn't like, oh, we're all Ivy Leaguers. Oh, we're all high end stock guys or something along those, and then I look at Babby and you see this guy who was at the knee of his father, general counsel with the Orioles. And he's been through that and coming up. So before I continue, just blow on the 30 owners, they have a responsibility to make this game fun again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping we're going to see that here. What are you seeing as far as owners, and what are some of the things you'd like to see?
Well, I think it's a very different era in ownership.
Mm-hmm.
The price of ball clubs has, of course, skyrocketed, along with the profit that one makes when one buys one and then sells one. But the classic difference between the people who used to own teams and the ones who now own teams is that they're no longer family owned. And so there was paternalism in that kind of ownership. I'm not saying that they were all, great forward thinkers about, players' rights, for example. They weren't. But they did care about baseball.
Yeah.
And usually, and in lots of cases, it wasn't a sideline. It wasn't like a vanity. They weren't like some guy from the world of tech who's anonymous except for the dollars he owns or the family money he's inherited. So, let's buy a toy and I'll get some good headlines for something else. There are an awful lot of those kind of owners now. And I think that that's where the problem starts. It's not, I mean, there's nothing in capitalism in the directory of rules of capitalism that says you have to actually care about what you buy. Nothing says that. And certainly, as far as I know, the only thing that you have to be in order to buy a team is solvent. And you don't even have to be willing to actually spend what you have on it, apparently. And I think that's the biggest problem is you've got ownership that of some teams that just don't seem to want to spend the money needed to win in this environment.
Yeah.
And that's partially because if I'm going off in a direction you prefer me to, quit, please just say so. It's because of a gentleman named William Holbert who helped organize the National League in the 1870s and who is in the Hall of Fame. I somehow have missed his plaque. I've never seen his plaque. And what he did in order to gain the trust and agreement of many of these rowdy owners back in the day, to get them to agree to a certain degree of uniformity in, scheduling and roster size and things like that, and just a whole set of rules how the game should be played, is he said, okay, here's what I'll give you. I'll give you the right to profit from anything you can earn in marketing, though that was probably not a term used then. You have territorial rights, right? Not that there was a whole lot of dough, involved in that in 1870, whatever it was. But from that nugget, from that original sin, as it were, what has come forth is a system where funding is dependent on geography, the location of a team, and also the size of your market, and also on an owner's ability or willingness to spend that which he has. And so you have a situation where the inequities in funding are laughable. I mean, it's the Dodgers with their $8 billion Spectrum Charter TV deal, and I use this as an example because they were kind enough to be honest about it. And the Royals with $40 to $45 million before their regional sports network crashed, thanks to the gambling entities that took it over, right? That have taken over RSNs. So you have a real fundamental economic problem there. And it's compounded by the fact that baseball in the present day is played 162 games in stadiums that they cannot fill. There's too much inventory. And a lot of people argue they just need to cut down the season. Well, cut down the season, you earn less money. But it's not a good look when you turn on the television and there are swaths of empty seats ringing the field. I mean, the dome wasn't a good look even before the top blew off. It was not a pretty sight. So there are fundamental issues that no one owner can fix. There's nothing, there. I don't know how you go to the Dodgers and say, you spent, X amount of thousands of millions of dollars to buy this, but we're going to tell you how to spend your money that you have. Because guess what? Rich people in America don't like to be told they can't spend their money, or that's the case of Steve Cohen or the Mets, or that you must spend your money. Yeah. So that is the current problem, and why there's likely to be a lockout, because the owners are craving a salary cap, the lack of which they blame for all of this. And there's it's hard to completely to argue with that. I used to wish that Marvin Miller would come back to life and run the newspaper union, the newspaper guild. That would have been, it would have been a really good thing for maybe newspapers wouldn't be non-existent today. But it is a system that has made it a very wealthy sport. It's a $12 billion business, and it's made a lot of people wealthy. But it's not equal. It is the haves and the have-nots.
So I do want to point out, though, like it's not as dire as it may seem. In the year 2000, attendance was 71.3 million, and this last year was 71.4 million. Almost identical across the board in terms of attendance. Now, there is the what you're talking about in terms of the half-empty stadiums, et cetera. There's always been that factor in terms of baseball, especially depending on who the opponent is, how many of those fans there are from the other team. They're going to come out to the games, what day of the week it is. I've always had a gripe with baseball games on Mondays. I don't think it should happen. I think Monday should be a travel day and a hype day. I like what the minor leagues have done in terms of going to the 6 day week, basically, where they actually play for 6 days and they have a day off. So that then if you need to recoup because of rainouts, etc. But it
Right.
gives you that's less travel for the players, more certainty in terms of the games being played, in one location, more hype in that location that team is there for the week. There's just more marketing that's able to be done because I find what's happening with baseball right now is it's too quick. You're jumping around from location to location. You never know where your team is going, and people are busy. Their attention spans are shorter. They're not paying attention as much to things
Right.
as they used to. So that's one area that I think baseball can
I
really.
agree. I agree with you 1,000%. And so does Davy Roberts, as you may have noticed in the book.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I
So
mean,
I really enjoyed that book, by the way. I think it's well written, and I think it brings up a lot of valid questions, especially when you start talking about the Savannah bananas and all this kind of stuff. I mean, the um, the joy has to come back, and I'm on the same page as you when it comes to 10-year-olds and below. I've seen you in another interview that you did, and you say that they should be able to go into the stadiums for free if they're under 10 years old. I think they should get to play the game for free. I think if you build that love of the game starting at a young age, and Major League Baseball can afford to do this and be the sport that stands up and says, you know what, any kid should be able to play baseball to a certain level, and that's 10 years old. And then from then on, you can continue, as you can.
yeah, well, I think you may remember Johnny Gomes said to me at a Savannah Bananas game where he was playing as a ringer with the men in yellow, and he said Major League Baseball should buy Little League and
Yeah.
staff it with old players. And then he said, playing devil's advocate, they say, "Oh, well, these old guys would want too much money to do it." And he said, and then he took the other side and said, "No, they would be happy to do it."
Yeah.
Um, there's too many of them don't that, are the stars, are the people who are in Cabo right now going to be willing to do that? I don't think so. But there's a lot of alumni who might well find some real meaning in helping do that. But to your point, yes, I know that afternoon games back in the day didn't sell out either. The difference is now you have television exposing it, and panning those stands, and it looks. Even last night, which game was I watching? It looked like there were empty seats in one of the playoff games, and I'm going, huh? Are they all, standing on line to get a hot dog? There are a whole lot of empty seats. So, can you imagine the public relations value? Sometimes, the best PR is doing something that's really right,
Hmm.
that's generous and forward thinking and different. So imagine when either Commissioner Manfred or myself gets up at a press conference we've called to say, you know what? We've watched what's going on, right? We've made the changes that we thought had to be made. And yes, they've made a difference. The pitch clock actually was already on the books, which most people don't know, but it's just never enforced. And that's obviously the most significant change because it's changed the length and the pace of games. Baseball's the only sport where guys who are participants could just call time and say, I think I'll wander down the third baseline for a while now and center myself, get my thoughts in order. Mickey Mantle managed to get into the box without, centering himself. He could barely stand up. He couldn't wander down the third baseline. It's to the point where they've made the changes they could make. But what the bananas have done is exposed a central problem that these rules didn't change. And that is that fans feel alienated. They don't feel really that they matter. I'm thinking of a couple of years ago when my blessed Yankees in a playoff game that was, delayed by rain, let people stand there for, I think, 4 hours without anybody telling them whether it was going to be played or what to do or offering them free food. No, just go spend money on beer, right? Overly expensive beer. And then, hours later said, oh, by the way, we're really sorry, but, we're going to have to cancel this. Well, yeah, they've built a system where weather has to be an issue, right? There are going to be those kinds of days in October and God, now November. When there's frost on the ground someday, I'm going to just like lose it. So anyway, back to my fantasy of a press conference. We've heard you. We've learned from the bananas. We see what they're doing right that we lost. So thank you very much, Jesse Cole. We're not going to do everything Jesse Cole does. We're not going to have people in the outfield doing, practiced catches of fly balls in center field. We're not going to have fans catching balls and counting them as outs because that really would sully the game in some profound way. But we're going to look for other ways for fans to be involved. And so to prove our mettle here and our bona fides, we're going to say any kid age 10 and under brought by an adult of a non inebriated sort can get in free. Fill
I
up
love
those
that
empty
addition.
seats.
That is an awesome addition.
Yeah. So why not? If I had a friend of mine, I was on a Zoom with him last night, a Sabre Zoom, Michael Haupert, who is a wonderful guy and an economist at the University of Wisconsin La Crosse. So I said to him, "Is this affordable? Am I blowing smoke?" And he goes, yeah. So he takes the Cubs menu from 2023, and I'm going to have him update it to show that it still makes sense. If you bought a kid a small kid size hot dog and a kid Coke and a cotton candy and bought a kid a small team cap, that it would have cost the Cubs all of $4 million in 2023. Now, I am a respecter of that number. If somebody want to give me $4 million, I'd be very happy. I don't personally have that lying around anywhere. But the 30 owners of Major League Baseball teams, no matter how broke they claim to be, that's chump change for them.
Yes.
If they can afford it, they'd find a way to write it off, whatever. And remember, that's the same year that the Cubs paid Jason Hayward $21 million to play for the Dodgers. So don't tell me it can't be done.
Yeah. To me, it would be a small start in the right direction. And you're right in that, we were talking about earlier before you came on about batting practice. Like they don't even let the people in to watch batting practice or give them access to the players more freely. Or, unless you're able to go to spring training, you don't get, which is a special experience that should be more promoted, to be honest. And as an event that they promote and kind of give people more access to some way, somehow. You're talking about kids, send them down to spring training, make that the experience that you send them on for summer camps and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I think there's a lot of connections that are made at a young age. Baseball has always been a family sport, more so than all of the other ones. I can remember going to baseball games and we would bring a cooler full of food. You're not allowed to do that anymore, but we would literally have sandwiches and hot dogs in there and drinks, and you wouldn't even have to pay more than $6 to get a family of 6 in the door. So that's the access that they need. So when you're looking at the attendances, that's the other thing I would say. Each person that's in attendance now is paying double what they were in 2001 for concessions, for parking, for all of the extra stuff that they charge you for now.
Oops, there's Betty. There's Betty the dog, who's, as you know, a character in the book, and she's barking because Oh boy, does she need to go out? Wait, you're gonna have to give me 1 second. James really needs to go out. Sorry. Um,
It happens.
it happens. Of course, everything in America and life costs double or triple what it did in 2001. So I'm not enough of a numbers person to know exactly what the increase is, but the fact of the matter is people have the impression, um, and they come by it honestly, that everything is for sale in Major League Baseball. The back of the mound is signage, right? You project an advertisement. When they had a deal with a company called Roman, now known as Row, I believe it's expired. It was the an MLB official supplier of male health aids. It's like what is it doing there? Please, God, and
I like the waste management ads.
oh
What
yeah. Um, and now your bicep is for sale.
That's it. Yeah.
And in the playoffs, the Strauss name on the batting helmets is for sale. The flaps above your ear, below your ears are for sale. And it so to the extent that is negotiable, could there be other options? Could they have a section where, picnic tables, where say you can come in, you can sit at these picnic tables and bring your cooler? I understand why it can't be throughout the ballpark the way maybe it was in 1925. Where you could bring your own home brew to the ballpark. I get that. But what about making a section out there? All the sections that they make out there now, what Janet Marie Smith calls the outfield experiences, are just places to make more money, to have a party.
Yep.
People don't look at baseball the same way. They don't sit for 9 innings and wait for the beer guy to come. They go to the beer guy. But not every part of the ballpark has to be beer guy territory.
No.
It just requires a willingness to say, okay, we're really going to do something different. That's the lesson of Jesse Cole that they need to learn. They need to be have less hubris about it and say, yeah, he's really shown us something. Yeah, as opposed to being defensive. They have incredible staffs that do research for them. They know what age people become baseball fans and why. They know that baseball fans, more than, football or basketball fans, are made when kids are really young. So when they can be a captive audience, right?
Yeah.
So why not take advantage of that?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're losing. Somebody I was laughing. I was talking to. I did an interview this morning with Tony Kornheiser. Pardon the interruption, and I was saying something about this, and I said, "Well, Mr. Tony, we're getting old." He goes, "Getting?" Yeah. So it's yeah. So I've been told in the course of doing this research that I'm dying. All right, fine. Thank you very much. But metaphorically, the generation, I would include you in that generation, that has supported baseball fervently through all these decades, it is dying, that generation.
Yeah.
And it does need to be replenished.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though since the new rules went into effect, and I'm not sneering at this, I'm not saying it's insignificant. I believe the increase this year was 2%, and on top of the first year it was 10 point something, then the year after it was 1 point something. It was close to 12, so it adds up to close to 12 now since they put the new rules in. That's not nothing. I'm not saying that's nothing, but it's not enough. It doesn't address the underlying problem.
Jane, one thing you talked about is fan engagement and also about youth. And a couple of things I remember is one point you're talking about the attention span for just keeps getting shorter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And to be able to keep a youngster's attention and involvement in a game that a play evolves, so and a bat evolves, and what happens to be able to do that. And you got to stop me someplace because you've got so much in here. I like the Um, I like one of the ways you look at addressing that by trying to incorporate what youth is involved with. You have, what is it called? The bot? You and
It's called
Peko put
Beat the Bot. And I
Beat the
am
bot.
so grateful that you asked about it because, I have been doing a lot of podcasts. The world of publishing and promotion changed a lot between the time I published the Babe Ruth book, which was 2018, and now because I seem to take a long time to do anything. So, okay. Um, but clearly, to sit and think we're going to get kids to sit there and keep score, no, not happening. I mean, get a life. Go and watch what kids do. And so I went to a woman who I revere now and has become a friend. Her name is Peko Hosoi, or I'm probably mispronouncing that. Hosoi, I think it's yeah. She's a professor of everything I don't understand in the world at MIT. Engineering and blah blah blah, whatever. And she is one of the people who was drawn to baseball as a kid because of the numbers. I mean, that's her language and she loves it. And she is the co-founder of the MIT Sports Analytics Lab, which is associated with the program and is a teaching tool. But it's also a business that does work all the time. It has contracts with FIFA to help develop wearables
Wow.
and better tracking devices in wearables. And she was on the committee to study the ball and why it seemed to be uneven and wasn't really juiced in 2017, 2018, when the spate of home runs took over. So I said to Peko, can you devise a handheld game to be played either on an iPad or a phone with that you could take to a ballpark and only play at the ballpark? A game where kids could interact with what's going on in the field, beneath, below, whatever, beside them, so that they can speak to the game and have the game speak to them in the language that they know. So she and her students took it upon themselves as a project one summer to create a game for me. And we tested it at the Cape Cod League because I'm Betty the dog, who may be back shortly from her ablutions, is a mascot for the Orleans Firebirds. And I go to those games as often as I can. I have a house in Truro, Massachusetts, in the ballpark, which is it's really a park. It was a park. It was created as a park in 1913 when the land was donated, and it's settled in a natural berm, in a hollow with a natural berm, and that's where you sit to watch the games. And it's an incredibly good field because now Major League Baseball donates money to each of the franchises to keep the field, up to the standards that they need in order to get the analytics and the tracking data on the players to see whether they want to draft them. But anyway, so we first discussed doing a game where you would read a QR code on a patch on a player's shoulder. I mean, if you can put, Montefiore Hospital on somebody's bicep, you can do the other. And it's the technology, it's doable. It's just, it was a much more complicated enterprise than putting together the game and the algorithm that they created, which was simply a game in which a kid, and it was geared towards kids. It could be scaled up, it could be scaled down, but it geared to kids to be able to say, can I predict better than the algorithm what's going to happen next? And the choices were pretty simple, right? But nonetheless, it was interactive. So because we did this on a Friday and the traffic coming out to Cape Cod and Route 6 on Friday afternoons in the summer is just abysmal. It was touch and go whether the students would get there on time and be able to set up. There was one announcement that was made by the, public address announcer. And, otherwise no warning to the crowd that, this was coming. And we had 80 kids sign up, right? So little kids running around saying to their mom, "Mom, I need your phone. I need your phone. I got to beat the bot. I got to beat the bot." And, Peko told me about one little guy, quite young, maybe 4 or 5, something like that, who said, "Oh, can we play now? Can I play the bot now?" And she's showing him the scoreboard out in deep left field, and she's saying, "Can you see that number right there? The 1 through 9. Can you see that?" And he goes, "Yeah." And she says, "What is it? What number are we at now?" "Oh, we're at 2." She said, "Yes, and we're not going to play until we get to the 5, right?" Because we're doing the fifth and sixth inning.
Right.
And, he goes, "Oh, I have to wait." Yes, you have to wait. She had other kids coming up to her and saying, "Is Froggy Pants an okay password in baseball?" Yes, Froggy Pants is an okay password. We had kids whose parents told us later would have been itching to leave, begging to leave, saying, "I'm not going until I beat the bot." And
Mhm.
they stayed, and the game worked.
Yeah.
And as a trial run, we were thrilled. We were just beyond thrilled that the whole thing worked at all. And then beyond that, that it illustrated, what can be done to engage kids and at an age where they need to be, and in a way they know, in a way that they have to be. Oh, there's a Roman ad on television right now
Mhm.
for, well, you can guess what it's an ad for. It's not a little blue pill. It's now a little red pill. Ooh, called Sparks.
I've always thought that with what you're talking about right there, you have baseball savant throwing out a whole bunch of data, a whole bunch of information. If you hook them up with Nickelodeon and you have the meta glasses also involved, where you can have things actually display on your glasses and actually or iPads or whatever you want.
You try getting those through a scanner.
Yeah. But you remember as a kid playing QB1 for football, and that's exactly the same kind of game as what you're talking about. You had to predict what play was coming up, what the result was going to be. You got points, and then they had the leaderboard. You
Right.
have a whole bunch of different ways of doing it. You could have the leaderboards by age group and then put them on the scoreboard. There's a lot of things that would actually.
They could rent the equipment there so you didn't have to, bring it or own it because it'd be too expensive. And you could do it for free. How about that?
Yeah,
Any kid who wants to play.
it'd be an app, to be honest. Like everything's
Right.
an app now.
No,
So
then that's what they created,
yeah.
and I just want to say, in case there's any businessman listening who wants to buy in and give this a better trial, we're we're willing, um, because you know we have to get over some illusions, and one of them is that kids are going to come back to this game the way they did in the past, in a world where it was safe to walk to the ballpark from home. You know, it, it it's just not going to happen.
I
And
do want to talk about one aspect though. I think that it gets missed a lot of times. And I've noticed this recently. I'm really focused in on it. It's the broadcasters, right? In today's world, Vin Scully wouldn't exist. He would never get that shot because pro players coming back to the game would be the broadcast team. I watched Alex Rodriguez, Derek Jeter, and David Ortiz all doing the broadcasting before a playoff game. Is that really who I want to watch? And the promotion of the game and the talking about the game. I know the Nationals broadcaster's retiring this year, and his whole frustration with not being able to call playoff games because it was going to be done by somebody that's national that has no ties to the game. There's a lack of feeling behind it when you're listening to the broadcast sometimes, and a lack of connection with the players, with the team, with how things are done. And that includes not having a broadcast team that is aimed at kids. That's also a separate,
that's a brilliant idea.
yeah, you could have two different broadcasts going on at the same time.
Well,
One
they
that,
already do. They have a different language,
yeah, right.
broadcast, and they have the gambling broadcast. So why not have a kids broadcast? That would be informative and explanatory,
Mhm.
as well. Teach them,
Yeah.
One of the things I said is have computer stations throughout the ballpark, where, if we have a game like this where kids can learn stuff, where they can go and find out what they want to find out about their favorite player, they can send them email, you know. God knows I'd hope that some of them would be decent enough to reply and understand the value in nurturing a new generation of fans. But there's a zillion things you can do. I'm not smart enough to know how many, because the technology is awesome. It's to a word person who doesn't understand or know how to make. I can't get my computer to have my mail show up on, every day reliably the same way. But there are people who do, they know. And I really think it's a question of willingness, not of and a recognition that it's necessary,
Mhm.
rather than oh, Ryan McMahon just made another unbelievable play at third base. But it's 2-1. The Yankees are losing.
Yep.
And thank you. I just thought I'd put that in there. Well, you want to explain to people why I care, or do you want to do it, or do you want me to do it?
I want you to do it.
Okay. My grandmother, Celia Zelda Fellenbaum, my mother's mother, lived, and I'm not, being hyperbolic here. One very long, loud foul ball from home plate at the real old first Yankee Stadium, and I could lean out the window on it was side streets. Sound carries in New York. It bounces off
Mhm.
the tenement buildings, the apartment buildings. It's just like in November when you have the Macy's Day Parade. It's actually the Thanksgiving Day Parade, but I call it the new people in New York call it the Macy Day Parade. The wind comes across those side streets from
Yeah.
the Hudson, and the balloons get buffeted. Well, that's the grid effect in New York, both of sound and wind. And so from my grandmother's parlor, I could hear Bob Shepard. I could not necessarily make out all the syllables, but the intonation and um, the wonderful timbre of his voice. I could hear thwacks, I could hear roars go up. And, to a little kid, my imagination was such that, I could project myself onto that field or into that ballpark and like, what happened? What happened? How come? What's making them roar?
Mhm.
And it was great. But I was so young. I was like 4 and 5, and so my sense of geography wasn't entirely perfect. I mean, her apartment actually faced away from the stadium, but there were these side windows that on 157th Street. So and if you look down the street, that's where it was.
Yeah.
So my devotion to the Yankees hardened into inevitable after she died. And what did I have left? There was a connection to her. I had the New York Yankees. And so she would take me there. She was, my family is Jewish, not particularly practicing what Al Rosen used to call revolving door Jews, which is not not a really nice thing to say, but it's really true. There are people who worship only at the high holidays. Chaz just made another error. Paul Goldschmidt made an error at first. Now, so there's one out, men on first and third. I'm just going to narrate. Oh, he really booted that badly. Oh, Chaz. Oh, Chaz.
Passion for the Yankees is as deep as it gets, is what you're getting to essentially, is that there's no inklings ever to leave the Yankee fandom. And
And
I
nobody
have
should ever question anybody's fandom because it's not logical.
No.
it isn't. I
It
agree.
it is not, if you go back far enough in anybody's childhood story of why they're attached to a team, it's something very personal.
Mhm.
Something happened or someone happened. And everything that's happened, since I was a kid, has made those attachments more difficult because of free agency. It was a natural consequence of free agency that teams don't stay together. I was talking about how ideas that I had for books at one point, I wanted to do the core four, the last group of guys that really grew up and grew old in their careers together. That's the Yankees core four. Thank you. But try dealing with four agents. No, that wasn't happening. So my grandmother went to synagogue on the high holidays, and she actually was more religious practicing than my nuclear family was. And we went to services at the Concourse Plaza Hotel, which is that big hulking building. There's on the right, if you're looking up 161st Street, there's the Bronx County Courthouse, which they now light up. When I was there the other day, it was all lit up. And then on the left side of 161st Street was this grand hotel where every swanky bar mitzvah that ever took place in the Bronx, where the Yankees welcome home lunches, an election. John F. Kennedy went there in 1960 when he was campaigning for president, or I guess 59, 60, yeah. So it has a beautiful ballroom with big, tall brocade. You can't call them curtains, they were drapes that draped this balcony, these big, tall, rounded balcony windows. And my grandmother, I like to say, loved me more than she loved God. And so when the shofar, the ram's horn that plays at the beginning of the Jewish New Year would sound, which is always a happy thing. That's a happy holiday. I'd be wrapped up in the brocade drapes listening to the ball game. It didn't always, the Jewish holidays don't come on our calendar. It's a Jewish calendar, so it's not the same time every year. It's not the same date. So whether there was a World Series in progress or not was variable. But I could see in that opening on the subway platform, the IRT subway platform, for a second you could see into the ballpark. And again, the fact that it made it accessible. What's going on in there? How come I'm not in there? What if I was there? Would the result change if I was there? If I was there, it would be different. Because, you're young enough that you think you matter that much to affect outcomes. And then she took me downtown on not the IRT, but the below ground IND line to buy me a baseball glove, my first baseball glove at Saks Fifth Avenue. Now, why in God's name did she think there would be a baseball glove at, then the poshest department store in New York facing Rockefeller Center? She didn't have any idea where they would sell a baseball glove. She just knew that she wanted the best of everything for me, and therefore you had to go to the best store. And God bless it. It was a opening of the season, and so there was a mannequin in a Yankee jersey with a glove on her hand, and she goes up to one of the salesmen. I think he was in the fragrance department, and says, "I'll have that for my granddaughter." And he goes, "Madam, that's not for sale." And she goes, "I'll have that for my granddaughter." And so I took Sammy Esposito home with me that day, and everywhere else, including to synagogue. My mother sadly threw the glove out along with the baseball cards and everything else. And a couple of years back, a really good friend of mine went and found one for me, exactly the same model. And it is the worst glove. And it has no pocket whatsoever. It was magical. It's just magical. So I went back to Saks Fifth Avenue a couple of weeks ago when I was in New York and took a picture of me standing. I mean, I remember exactly where the mannequin was standing, right by the front door, first glass panel. And it was Sammy and me. In fact, when I was at the Washington Post and we didn't have a baseball team and you had to figure out something to write on opening day, it often became my task to find a baseball story to write in Washington, the nation's capital without a team. And so one year I decided I would go find Sammy Esposito. And I found him at North Carolina State, where he was assistant basketball coach and the assistant. Oh no. Okay. They've just scored 2 runs.
Oh,
Okay. Four,
oh,
4-1.
you just gave me an idea though with the baseball glove, because I still have my first baseball glove that I got from playing my first team, right? And then I kept it, and my daughters used it when I was teaching them how to catch, etc. But what if you had, like, in terms of the kids that we're talking about, giving them access to baseball for free before the age of 10? If you had like an Easter egg hunt, but it's for baseball gloves instead, and you have it around the stadiums or around the baseball fields wherever they play, and you have it, as you know, you're also providing them the gear, because not everybody can afford a baseball glove. In a lot of areas, they don't have access to the stores or whatever. It could be any number of reasons that they don't have a glove. But to me, that's the one thing you need in the sport. You wear any shoes you want. The only essential is, well, a ball
A
and a
ball.
glove, right? And they
Right.
could be each one of them into the other. But yeah, that's a
It's a
really
particularly
interesting.
good it's a particularly good idea specifically, and Janet Marie was the person who pointed this out to me. You
Mhm.
know, the netting that has been installed to protect against balls going into the stands and hitting people has cut down on that interaction. Too, there's very few places that you can actually catch a baseball anymore
Yeah.
except in the outfield where there are outfield experiences. Um, as she liked to, she was just horrified when she found out that was a name now. Oh,
Yeah.
I want to have an outfield experience. Can you build me a ballpark with an outfield experience?
I tell you what, I want to thank you for the vivid color you brought in your book. I felt like I was sitting there in that dugout with you and Miss Sue and Coach Nick, and looking out across the field and seeing the berm with all the blankets laid out there, that kaleidoscope of them out there. You brought me into that moment, and I said, "Daggone!" I mean, that was important to me. And coming back to some of with the player interaction, you talked about some of that earlier. Somebody came from Jesse Cole about having people going into the stands. Now,
Mhm.
the Trop was still there, and when we still had Randy Rosarina, we had a place called Randyland, and we had a section. I don't know if you ever saw any of that, Jay, but
Yeah, I did.
and well, when Randy was traded to the Mariners,
Right.
he took his last day after the deal was done, and he sat in Randyland with the fans. And that's the sort of thing. It's like, damn, that's that's the way baseball should be. There should be those type of moments. There should be the sort of things where they're there, they're part of the crowd, they're engaged. And in the book, you point out how many people are on a 60-day IL and are sitting at home, not making, getting paid, not doing anything. But couldn't they be out there being the ambassador in the stands, being out in front of the kids, doing different activities? And you've got so much great stuff that you at the end you're talking with Miss Sue, you're talking with it's Dave Roberts and the others. And I'm like, yes, bring this together. I'm ready. Let's have Jane as our commissioner right now. Let's enact this right now. Let's go, team.
You know what? I've been astonished by how many baseball guys, and I mean, I spent my entire childhood wanting to be a baseball man because that was the highest compliment anybody could pay anyone. Oh, he's a baseball man. I was surprised at how many baseball men um, actually agreed with me with a lot of things. I mean, Rob Manfred didn't create this problem all by himself. It took decades of inaction and inattention to allow these things to come to the point that they have. It was about not being proactive. about I mean they need to hire an MLB visionary and make that a new vice president of being a visionary. Tell us what's gonna happen before it happens so we can start planning for it. And some of the things you don't have to have 30 owners agree on.
Yeah.
There are things that they could do that they could just say, this is the way it's going to be, right? And I'm sure it would have to be a negotiation with the union on who takes batting practice first or last.
Yeah.
But if you do what you're suggesting, which is have Mondays off, this is a sequence, a chain reaction. If they're going to add more franchises, which they seem determined to do, which will dilute the talent even more and make travel even crazier, because I don't see that Rob Manfred's going to be able to get the conferences that geographical conferences that will allow small market teams to play small against small market teams and feast off each other all summer and then get to the playoffs and have to face the Dodgers. Yay! I don't see how that works. If they add to that, if they add another layer to the playoffs, which clearly they wanted to do and tried to do when they did the 22 collective bargaining agreement, they're going to have to cut the season back. You can't add another layer of playoff games without starting earlier, which you can't do because of weather, or ending later, which you can't do because of weather. And God forbid they decide that all important games at the end of the season have to be played under a dome that's a neutral site. That would really not go over well with me. That might be my out. And Dave Roberts said, give us Mondays off.
Mm-hmm.
Let us reset the pitching staff.
Yeah.
Give everybody a day to collect themselves, get where they got to go, breathe. Ball players use the word and say it's a grind. They're not kidding.
Yeah.
You try living like that, going back and forth across the country, even if you have charters. Flying right now is not exactly a piece of cake for anybody, even them. So I agree with you. I'm going to, when I rewrite this, I'm putting in the minor league schedule. Makes much more sense. There are ways to do this. And I think the chief one that I think needs to be enacted is adding to the pitching staff.
Yeah.
How many, pitching arms do you want to destroy before you realize, that you have to do something radical here?
Yeah, I have a preconceived notion that just from experience and what I've seen and watched, I think they just don't want to pay them, to be honest. They're seeing it as a protecting themselves from having to pay pitchers down the road because they know they can just turn the leaf, go to a new pitcher and move on. Meanwhile, the person's destroyed their body, doesn't get the amount that and the long career that they should have had. I think that's it's a self-feeding prophecy as well because the player is enabling it by acting in that way. But if he doesn't get the roster spot. So it's a catch-22.
Tom Glavine suspects a conspiracy theory like that. He thought that was why starting pitchers weren't getting the big money and big free agent deals. And now some of them are clearly, but it requires an understanding about how integral that pitcher batter or pitcher ace versus ace confrontation is to the experience of the game.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the change in the way starting pitching is used or abused is the single most destructive change, both to the health of the pitchers and their arms, but also to the health of the game. Because baseball is a game that's told stories and has stories to tell, but you can't tell the same stories anymore because the same things don't happen.
Yeah.
And every time a manager takes a guy out who's throwing a no-hitter or a perfect game, you're short-circuiting the reasons to come to the ballpark.
Right.
I had this discussion unendingly with Dave Roberts about taking Kershaw out of his perfect game in April 2022. Yes, there were concerns. Yes, it was cold. Yes, he was coming back from injuries. All those things. It wasn't a normal situation. But as A.J. Ellis, his catcher, said, if ever there was going to be a person that for whom the norms don't apply, it's going to be Clayton Kershaw because he's Clayton Kershaw. And the next day, Bill the Spaceman Lee, who's become a buddy through all this, who still was, when I started this, was still pitching at that field in Cape Cod in senior league games. He called me the next day and he was like shrieking and he starts to cry. I said, Spaceman, why are you crying? And he says, because he wasn't given a chance to see how good he could be.
Mhm.
And fans weren't given a chance to see how good the game can be.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's what's undermining, in my view, that's what every decision that's made is, well, if is it made for his health? Maybe it is, so be it. But it is never based on what is the most entertaining thing to do. And with an eye towards that obligation. I mean, as AJ Ellis said, that's our job. That's what we're here for. And it's the reason they have the 1922 tax exemption because it's not supposed to be a business, it's supposed to be an entertainment. So, how about making some decisions based that at least factor that in? And I was saying this to Davy Roberts, and I don't want to take credit. Well, I'll get a chance to talk to him when this is all over. But in Baltimore, and the next day he left Yamamoto in to come back. He had a no-hitter going against the Orioles, and he brought him out for the ninth inning to pitch to see if he could get the no-hitter. And what happens? Jason Holiday, son of Matt, brother of Ethan, hits a wall scraper of a home run. There was no bringing it back. So he lost the no-hitter and they lost the game. But it was a great moment for baseball.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because you do like bring all that in together in terms of the entertainment side of things. I kind of want to push it to another side that I think you've touched on a lot of your books, and that's the tie between the sport of baseball and culture in America and in the world in general. What do you think baseball's role is going forward based on what we've seen baseball having in terms of an impact through the decades, most recently?
Well, call me pie-eyed, but I have thought this. In 2012, I worked for a contract to write for, oh God, what's the name of the thing that was the ESP? Oh, Grantland. Grantland. That was the online magazine style, for sports writing.
Right.
And I did a piece on CTE and the woman who was at the forefront of investigating the brains of the football players who shoot themselves thoughtfully in such a way that that their brains are preserved for science. I think Dave Duerson was the most recent guy at that point. And long and short of it is, they're going to figure out how to detect and diagnose chronic traumatic encephalopathy. I used to be able to do it. It used to roll off my tongue. CTE, this brain disease that you get from having your head bashed in over and over and over again, starting when you're 14. They're going to be able to diagnose it in living people. And when they find out how many kids already have the beginnings of it when drafted, do you think Mark Sanchez might be somebody? I mean, every time now that some football player goes amok, I think, okay, is this another case of CTE? Because their brains are destroyed. They're eaten by and eaten away at, and they're the anger and rage and acting out and all sorts of crazy stuff. It's a terrible, terrible way to grow old and ultimately to die. So I do not understand for the life of me why Major League Baseball doesn't have a marketing plan that includes saying to parents, bring your kids back to baseball, the game they're going to remember.
Well,
oh my goodness.
yeah.
That's a t-shirt waiting to happen.
Yeah,
For
right.
all the right reasons.
It's not nice,
Mm,
but it's true.
Yeah.
mhm.
Baseball isn't going to render your kid an idiot. You know,
I've interviewed, dozens of players that played in the minors. I can remember at least a dozen of them that mentioned the choice they had to make, from high school to college, and they decided on baseball because of the longevity of it, and that they thought they would have a better quality of life, is the way they termed it.
it
Just
actually isn't that much difference I don't think these days in the number of years as average career length. It's not as much in baseball as you might have thought. But maybe it's all those relievers who are, the parade of big boys who come and throw 100 miles an hour, wreck their arms, and disappear for the rest of eternity. But long story short, why don't they have somebody under the age of 30 marketing this sport?
You and I are on the same page. It's one of my pet peeves.
Yeah.
Is I think again, like for a while they brought in Theo Epstein, they brought in a whole bunch of people to bring together new ideas, and I think they had a good effort going forward. But honestly, I don't believe we have the right commissioner in place. When you have the commissioner literally calling it a piece of metal trophy, you just don't feel like your heart is in it at that point. So I think you do need somebody with a vision and passion at the top of the hill that says, this is the direction we're going to take, and we're going to, focus in on a lot of youth initiatives to get this going. So having a new commissioner like yourself in play for that would be perfect at that point, right?
And let's have a feminist day. I'm tired, okay, you can't bring back Ladies' Day because that's not cool anymore. But how about feminists bring your daughter to the ballpark day? How about having, daycare? I mean, you can't bring an infant to the ballpark and expect to be able to actually watch a game. So, by the way, I don't know if you would like to see this, but Betty the dog, who is sitting here waiting for her treat. Can you see her?
Oh, yes. Hi, Betty.
Nothing gets past her. Nothing. She has incredible mouth-eye coordination.
That's awesome.
Oh,
I have to get her a treat in a minute. That's what I'm trying to say.
I tell you, I come back to you as the commissioner because looking at trying to wrap everything you had, talking about one thing Rob Manfred said, and about right drove me nuts. One baseball, one MLB. But you as commissioner, the thing that you offer, I kind of like because you were talking from the ground up from Little League, and you put things in place as far as protecting these children, to young players, as far as maybe what speeds they be throwing at. You have something in place where coaches are taught how they should be working with these young arms and certain behaviors that they need to display. And if they're not, they're gone. I love that.
Like the CTE and the way it is the product of all the hits you've taken in your life, starting at, a young age.
Yeah.
The damage to pitching arms starts very young. And so there's no requirements in Little League or anywhere else that you have to be trained to be a coach.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a guy at Driveline named Devin Morgan who's actually a very good, reasonable guy. He's, no matter what people think of Driveline, he's good. He publishes once a week. He publishes has a Twitter feed on, the worst thing that happened in Little League this week. There was a kid who was left in, I think it was not more than 2 innings and maybe, I don't know, something like that, to give up 22 runs. It's like, what? I mean, I can look that up for you. I'm sitting on my phone.
Oh my gosh.
I can look it up.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of college coaches get called out for that as well. And now I think a lot of colleges do have systems in place where they have triggers, right? Where at a certain pitch count, they pull them.
Well, yeah, I mean, there should be all of that,
Mhm.
all of that. And, you know, clearly baseball's decided as both an economic thing and for whatever other reason to ratchet back the minor leagues and rely on colleges to basically be the development program the way it is in football.
Mhm.
Um, that too has economic deficits in terms of small market teams who needed the bigger basket of players to develop. So they needed more than three affiliated teams to be able to do it. But the fact is that everything is predicated on money.
Yeah.
And it's complicated because okay, say a kid playing for your D level team needs a Tommy John surgery, right? Which is very likely. You don't really think he's ever going to be anything, but you need bodies and you're going to give him a chance. And now suddenly you have these medical bills. Last year, this was in MLB's report on shoulder injuries and elbow injuries. They paid $1 billion to people to sit on the injured list. A
Yeah.
billion dollars in medical, the medical costs added up. That's the salary cumulative salary that was paid to people not playing.
Yeah.
Thirds of it were for pitching related injuries. And to their credit, and I have no problem giving them credit for doing the right thing. Um, to their credit, so they instituted just last month, or maybe it's this month, a limit on how many days and times and months that kids can be scouted in high school and in college.
Right.
Because if there's a tournament or a showcase, scouts will be there, and if scouts will be there, the kids will be there.
Mhm.
That's just the way it is. And so they don't stop. They don't rest their arms. They don't have anything else in their lives.
Yeah.
They don't play other sports. Buck Showalter said to me, if I looked at a resume for a kid, um, a combination of words that one shouldn't have to say out loud, but if I look at a kid and all he's ever done is play baseball, it's a red flag
Yeah.
for both injuries and for the development of the kid and whether the kid's really going to want to play baseball and whether it's really up to him. There's a system now of youth baseball, with Perfect Game that claims to be a nonprofit. I don't know how that's possible, but they claim to be a nonprofit, which brings together the best talent in the country at huge sporting complexes, all in Southern California sites, because that's where you can play all year.
Mhm.
And it gives coaches and scouts a chance to see the best kids in action.
Yeah.
Playing against each other, which you need to see whether you're a coach or you're a kid. You need to see who's better than you, right? The problem is you've got 16-year-olds aspiring to throw 95 miles an hour. And you've got kids having preemptive Tommy John surgeries. Well, I'm going to have it, so I might as well do it now. And thankfully, you've got some really ethical doctors like Jeff Dugas in Birmingham, who created the internal brace surgery. He won't operate on kids of a certain age because their bones and their plates aren't all completely formed. It's a huge deal. So that they limited this, that they announced they were going to do this, that's a big deal. That's a really good thing.
Mhm.
But again, it's going to have to go further. They're going to have to attack this whole system that has, with laissez-faire management, has been allowed to develop to the detriment of the kids and the sport.
Yeah.
Wow.
Devin Morgan is the guy at Driveline. He said, it's the Wild West out there.
I think the 6-day rotation If you set up that Monday off, 6 days games afterwards in one location, that gives you the ability to say, okay, well now they've already said you have to face three batters if you're a reliever. Well, you could say that every one of those games has to be started by a different person so that the same starter can't start twice over that 6 game span. And that would give them at least the rest to recuperate, even though they're going to be throw too hard, more than likely in their start. At least then they're getting the chance for their body to actually recoup. And in high school and in a lot of different things, they use like, okay, your Saturday pitcher is this guy, your Sunday pitcher is this guy. There's a marketing aspect that can be thrown at it as well, right? So there's a little bit of ability to do that on the starting pitching front and not just have the relief option like what they've done recently, which I'm not exactly a big fan of. I think you should have the ability to flick on the switch and flick off the switch at will, but I get the exchanges. You want to limit those. But yeah, the velocity thing, I enjoy pitchers. I enjoy like the crafty people that have 6, 7 pitches.
Yes.
And you can tell the good athletes on the mound that field their position well. I think that comes from playing other sports, basketball, etc. So hopefully baseball does a better job of attracting complete athletes over time. The football aspect, I think the head injuries is a huge knock on football for sure. I don't know how you get around that one for football. But for baseball, the injuries, $1 billion, like that means that you're not promoting your sport properly because a lot of your best talents aren't on the field. This year, we missed Jarrett Cole the entire year, because he had that surgery. And I can't say that he would have prevented it pitching a different way. But he was using the tack, and then he was throwing extremely hard the majority of his career. So it's not a surprise that he comes down with the injury he does it. And you're without him for an extra year out of his career. Whereas back in the day, that, didn't happen very much. I still think that baseball should get away from asking the people who do the Tommy John surgeries for advice on the Tommy John surgery. Because I think there's an incentive there to not give you all the information, right?
You mean like finding a surgeon who sees surgery as the answer?
Yeah.
I mean, we know. So yeah,
I'm not going there with you on that. Because do I think it's become an industry? Of course it has. Are there a lot of doctors making money off operating on, is 17-year-olds who are having it preemptively? Yes. But then there's the Keith Meister, who is now one of the top guys, along with the guy in California, whose name I'm blocking on. Aratashi, is that how you pronounce it? There was a big profile of him in the New Yorker, and I should have learned how to say his name by now. But Meister said, he was asked a question, well, what do we do about it? And he said, go play catch in the backyard.
Mhm.
That's what you need to tell kids to do. Go play catch. And how about those fundamentals? Is this a good product to be selling? I don't think so. But
Yeah.
I'm old fashioned. Anyway, back to the pitching staff. My idea is that they need more arms.
Mm.
And this whole parade between IL, the Major League Club, the AAA is crazy and it's made for deception and rife with it. So, and now he just beamed somebody. Okay. Um, so I'm, I'm glad you're with me. Otherwise, I would be like sitting here hitting my head. The what I would do is take the 13-man pitching staff and use some of the money you're going to save by not having to have so many Tommy John surgeries to pay 2 or 3 additional pitchers, right? So I listened to Dusty Baker and those guys talk about how hard it was just to find somebody who could lift their arm.
Yeah.
By July, these guys are tapped out and they're looking at each other's waiver wires with, oh, I can fix him. Yeah, right. Right. And so this way you'd have every day 11 pitchers designated to be active. If you have only 11 pitchers, the way it used to be before, after it used to be 9, which people seem to function with, okay. if you have only 11, it is going to mean that you have to have people pitching more innings.
Right.
And so it would nudge the sport back to what people want to see. The evidence based on, I'm gonna say Cam's last game before tonight, where the shutout with 12 strikeouts and no walks. What was notable about it was Aaron Boone sent him back out for the 8th inning, and people were grateful.
Mhm.
And I don't know whether it was Buster Olney or somebody else in the booth who said, and there was an ovation. And it wasn't just for what the kid had done, it was for what he was being allowed to do.
There you go.
There's a hunger for that kind of pitching performance. So yesterday's starter, why should he be counted among your 11? You're not going to use him. Put him on, put him on the taxi squad. Take the 2 arms attached to guys who are the most exhausted. Put them out there. Give them some time off, but they can throw on the side. Not max heave for getting hot for an appearance and then not getting called into the game, but throwing more often, which old guys say is one of the reasons they get hurt is that they don't condition their arms to throw more.
It's true. I agree. The way that pitchers kind of go about it, I mean, I can't even put myself in their mindset in terms of going through an entire season. And your initial thing to want to do when your arm is hurting is to rest. And then your resting to you is to not move it. And obviously, I think, who was it? The big guy from Texas, Nolan Ryan. He used to talk about that and how he was always throwing. He was like, even on days when he was sore, even on days when he was, Randy Johnson spoke about the same thing. I used to watch Doc Holliday.
Koufax does too, right?
Yeah. Doc Holliday used to,
We're going to get Bette a treat. Okay.
Alrighty.
sounds good.
All right. Keep talking. I'm listening.
It's all good.
Listening. Come on, Bette. Let's go get you your treats. Let's go.
What are her treats? Is it liver or?
No, it's I'm a really indulgent mom. I got her. Hold on, it's human grade beef jerky.
Ooh.
Ooh, it smells horrible. Okay,
I might steal some of that. That's
Hey,
awesome.
Yeah.
it's let's see, full moon natural essential jerky tenders.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh God, smell is bad. Human grade dog treats. I haven't tried. Ranch grown,
I can see the tail wagging.
cruelty-free
Oh my
dog
God.
treats.
Yeah.
I tried buying some others today. She went fat. She's too smart for that.
Sorry, Mom. This isn't it.
Okay, Bette. Now you have to do. I could try to get a ball and get her sit. Say hi, Bette.
Hello.
Hey, Bette. How's it going, sweetie?
Out with a treat here. She needs a haircut. I don't know how she can see.
I have a cockapoo and we have the same issue. There's always hair all over his eyes.
But she's much better than a husband.
Fully understood. I do have to ask you, what do you think about the new Yankee Stadium? Because I happen to have gone to both the old one, or the older one, not the oldest one, but the one just before this one, and then the new one. And I felt like, I've been to Wrigley, I've been to Fenway. You walk in there and you get a feeling and a sense of history. And there's something that goes with that I don't think can be replaced. And I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan. The Forum had the same thing. The Bell Center doesn't have it. So what did New York lose by deciding to go with the new stadium?
Authenticity.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
I think in a moment of utter disdain, refer to it as an oral food court.
Yeah.
It's pretentious. It's overdone. It's they had a problem over there, which was historical. And people, some people understood it and knew what it was. The reason the steel beams started to move, and there was that game, the famous game that they had to shut down the ballpark because of the upper left field grandstand, some of those old beams were starting to go. The old Yankee Stadium was built on landfill that was excavated from where they dug the tunnels for the subways on the Grand Concourse, where the Concourse Plaza Hotel is, where my grandmother and I went to not pay attention to the rabbi and listen to the game. And it's swampland. And it was Cromwell's Creek runs right through there's a reason it's called River Avenue. It's right beside the river. The land that was bought by from the Astors was, for one point it was a junkyard. At one point it was a silent studio, a movie studio. There was really nothing there, and it was not expensive. And it was swampy. So, I used to wonder why it was when you go in there in like May and it was warm outside, it was always like a chill. And somehow it looked steamy, There was water right below the field. It didn't get soggy out there, but it did, the Yankee Stadium field was famously uneven, right? It was built uneven to begin with, where that warning track that was sloped, the way they tried to imitate something like that in Texas at the very beginning, and the stadium before the stadium and that the Astros played in, Tal's Hill it was called. But the long and the short of it is it would be very hard to shore that up, right? So that they moved is not my big objection. The wind dynamics are different because you're north, again, 161st Street, winds blow it right up there. It's different. It doesn't play the same way exactly. And it's immense the way the original one was intended to be immense and say, we're the Yankees, we're different. I'm looking at it on the television now. It's pretentious with the gold lettering outside carved into the facade. Oh my God, give me a break. Not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
Not my cup of tea.
I
And
think
you
if
can
I
build a beautiful stadium these days, right? Look at PNC in Pittsburgh. Look at Baltimore. Look at Petco. There are beautiful ballparks being built. So
to me, it's just more about the amenities having some warmth to them, the ambiance not being so stark in contrast and cold feeling essentially. Because like a lot of people feel like the modern styles are a little bit colder, whereas a lot of stadiums that are warm and welcoming are a little bit more grimy, to be
yes,
quite honest.
there's a lot of generations of schmutz.
Right. Exactly.
Couldn't clean it all up. Aaron Judge just struck out.
Oh man.
Okay. One out in the bottom of the eighth.
We're a welcome distraction, Jane. This is what's going on right now.
This was a badly constructed roster.
I agree. Yeah.
And then the injuries, you can say they were unpredictable, but they weren't unpredictable. You have to assume that at this point that some of your pitchers are going to disappear with their arms in tatter. You can't just say, "Oh, I have enough."
But who's going to teach the Yankees fundamentals? Like in terms of, like, let's say they bring in all these names, right? You have an ex-MVP in Cody Bellinger. You have Jazz Chisholm, who's had a lot of success. You have Paul Goldschmidt, who's won Gold Gloves. Yeah, like the fundamentals should already be there. Like they're just, it's
not
more
just the Yankees.
Yeah.
And I think it comes from the fact that basically it evolved into primarily an offensive game.
Mhm.
That's what's important. That's why, all those years before they got rid of the shift, where they were putting, clumsy outfielders at second base, because people were going to just hit the ball over them and to get it over the shift anyway. There is, oh, finally Stanton got a hit. Let's just see if you're going to pinch run for that sucker. And watching him try to motor around the bases is always interesting. Um, you know, Roy Eisenhart, who ran the A's for his father-in-law, Walter Haas, in the 80s, was saying, to hell with a home run competition, the All-Star game. Bring back the skills competition.
Yes,
Agreed.
Now, that's not going to happen either. But or they could have both. But I mean, who starts a season without a third baseman?
Yeah, I know. That was just there's a lot of issues, right? Like every team has questions when you start the season, but there's certain teams that should have very few, and the Dodgers and Yankees to start are those that should not have those kinds of questions pop up.
Well, the amount of money being spent, how it's being allocated does not seem to match up with what's needed. Let's put it that way.
Right. And that kind of brings me to my last point or my last question for you tonight, because I know we've held you on for a long time.
Well, I was late and I apologize.
Oh, don't even.
So in terms of the CBA coming up, how do you see it playing out? And what do you hope gets avoided most and not put in place through the CBA?
Well, two things. When Rob Manfred began this year by announcing to everybody, there's going to be a lockout, guys. And you need to expect that this is the new norm, that every time we renegotiate every 6 years, this is pretty much the way it's going to go. And really that's not so bad because, it's like using a 22 rather than a nuclear weapon. I just thought, this is the commissioner of baseball?
Yeah.
How is that a way to promote the game? You see, begin the season, you say, we really want you to come back to baseball, but by the way, we want you to be loyal. We want you to buy expensive seats. We want you to do all these things, but we're gonna screw you, right?
Yep.
Because ultimately, the last thing that matters is the fans. I was horrified. I mean, just absolutely horrified by that. Maybe there was some purpose that I don't understand. I don't know. Warning people. Clearly, the owners, I've been hearing for 2 years, they're going to try to break the union. They're going to try to break the union. That's not going to happen either.
No.
There'll probably be a lockout. I propose in the book a solution that if you were watching last month when Bryce Harper got in his face, he started talking about the cap. This is not something that they're going to give up easily. They're going to have to be given something really significant. I started talking to people about, well, what if you reduced the requirement of 6 years for free agency? What if you gave them free agency earlier? How would that work out financially? Oh, well, then are you going to take away arbitration? You really don't want to take away arbitration. My dad was an entertainment lawyer who did deals between people who hated each other, and he represented all of them in the same deal and got it done. So there are always ways, again, thinking outside the box. My friend Michael Halpert, the economist, came up with a fairly traditional cap kind of agreement way to do it, to split the money that would mean that every franchise had the same amount of dough to begin with to spend on player salaries. Not happening. Dan Okren came up with a variation on that theme that did basically the same thing, except that it acknowledged that the bigger teams, meaning the bigger revenue teams, because they've spent more money to purchase those franchises and to develop them, are entitled to a greater share of the dough. You're splitting it among owners. And that sounded much more reasonable to me, to get the owners to agree to it. But bottom line, I don't see, this is a hill they're going to die on. So what about taking the existing luxury tax system, um, which has been abused so often by owners that by the money they get that is required, if they're required to spend it on player payroll,
Yeah.
and instead they pocket it. There are still grievances pending from 2018 and 19. And when you ask why players don't trust the owners, yeah, they have reason, right? But okay, let's say we make the penalties for the Steve Cohens of the world even steeper than they are. Uh, you know, rich Americans don't like being told that they can't spend their money any way they want, right? Okay, Steve, go ahead, spend it. But if you give somebody else $765 million for 15 years, by which time I think they're likely to regret that deal, let's put it that way, you know, then you are really going to pay through the nose. And we're going to give those other teams enough. And they already give them substantial amount of money. The Pirates, the Rays, the Marlins. Thank you. I'm glitching here. And they don't spend it; they pocket it. So we're going to put in penalties if you do not spend it the way that you have promised to spend it. First, you're going to lose all your draft choices. Nothing. No, 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 just slap on the hands, you move down 10 places. None. Zero. Zilch. Then we're going to reduce your 40-man roster to a 35-man roster. And if that doesn't work, you're going to get relegated to triple A. You want to field a triple A team? Go play in a triple A ballpark, and Major League Baseball will have a test to see how baseball will do in Nashville.
But you bring up an interesting point, because the one thing I do know is that the EFL, like the soccer league in England, has that system.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. And I think that's coming to baseball. I do. And it's going to take a long time. I think it'll start with a few AAA locations that have the stadium capacity to make it work, et cetera. It'll be a slow process. But I'm not against that process taking place, because I think it does two things. Number one, it brings AAA up to a certain level, because then fans will be familiar with more AAA teams that are involved in that league, so that it hypes up your minor leagues, and it keeps teams accountable to a certain point, which I think you're entirely right. Owners, reap all the benefits of all the shenanigans that go on. And I think a lot of times the richer owners stay quiet because they just get a better chance at the playoffs. They get a better chance at the better players. They get, all the notoriety that they're after, which is what they really feed off of anyway. And they're all making money, to be honest.
They have a reason to be angry that they're being taxed and it's not being used. I mean, it's in the collective bargaining agreement. You must spend this money on player salaries, and they don't. In fact, it says 150% of the money. I don't know quite how that works, but that's what it says. And so the animosity and distrust are so baked in now, so institutional in between. Roy said, oh, it's like an old married couple that, still fighting 30 years later over picking up the dirty socks from the floor. That is not nearly a dark enough simile. This is George and Martha in an Edward Albee play tearing each other apart every 6 years.
Right. And the last time you saw the players get involved, they actually had Max Scherzer there. They had a whole bunch of players literally there paying attention to every single detail. So I'm wondering who's going to hold that position again this time. And you have a lot of
I would argue actually that an unfair percentage of the money is going to those old guys. And part of what's happening is they're trying to undo a system in which you've been remunerated for the money that for what you've already done, as opposed to what you're being paid prospectively to do. And that's always been part of the system in baseball. And that's why you made your biggest salary when you're oldest. And, Willie Mays was he making his most money when he was stumbling around in Shea Stadium? I'm not sure. But it was always weighted that way. I don't know why the average salary is lower in baseball than it is in hockey or the NBA, I think, or football. It's why is that? It was I think it was 760 last year. Um,
Tell you exactly why. Because in hockey and in basketball, the 80% that get paid less refuse to hand everything over to the 20% that make the most.
well, I
Hmm.
think that's you ask what I think might happen, in this cycle.
Mhm.
I think there might be, and why the union might be susceptible to being broken um, if the owners really try to do that. It might be because of how the allocation of funds, it is why it's so weighted towards the top. So, okay, I'm looking up average. What is it? It's the minimum salary, minimum MLB salary.
I think they're up to 760 a year now ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that's what it was, but then I read somewhere that it was higher, that it was eight something this year.
Huh.
Yeah, might have
Um,
gone. Yeah.
let's find out. Minimum MLB salary 2025, 760.
Yeah. There you go. My
Oh,
brain still works.
Yeah, increasing to
wow.
780 in 2026.
And look
Very-
what the minor leaguers had to do to get a wage.
Yeah,
But
so
it's a beautiful game worth saving and improving and sharing. And somebody called me an old curmudgeon for this book, and I'm like, have you read it? Online the other night, somebody said, "Well, I think that's a really light take," and I'm like, why don't you try reading the book? This is
Cheese and
based on
crackers.
a 2-minute television interview. Um, I've been very interested. I mean, I'm very gratified at the time people like yourselves have given me to talk about it. I've been very surprised at how little of it's wise ass. It was intentionally wise ass.
Yeah.
I wanted it to be funny. I'm funny, but there's a lot of serious stuff in there,
mhm.
and
Yeah.
particularly the section about how this happened, um, what led to what led to what. Um, but we live in a fast take, light take world. And, my big problem with, baseball is that it is example A, prima facie evidence of where this world is headed, in which knowledge and experience is doubted, and it's not something anybody wants to talk about. Why do you push the old guys out and say, why did that young punk, as Dusty Baker described him, tell him, well, you can't believe what your eyes tell you. Your eyes are wrong.
Mm.
Well, I'm sorry, 50 years of experience is worth something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I take some hope in guys like Ron Washington, Bruce Bochy, and all the old school kind of managers that have come around and they've been.
But Boch left.
Yeah, I know.
Maybe I don't know whether he wants another job or not. I
Right.
mean, he did come back and win another World Series,
Mhm.
and Ron Washington was told last week by the
Yeah.
ineffable Perry Minasian, who's done nothing,
Right.
um, that he's not welcome back, and it was based on performance. Was that really necessary? It's not because of your health. The guy drove himself into the ground, worked himself into the ground to try to justify that he was the right man for this job. And I spoke to him last week, and I revere this man, the minister of particulars, about doing things right and learning the right way to do things.
Yeah.
Uh, and I said, well, the way you can look at it, Wash, is that maybe it saved your life because, at least you were around medical staff. And if you hadn't worked yourself to the bone the way you were doing, maybe the heart would have gone at some point, sometime when you weren't likely to be, around the doctors that you needed to be.
I've talked to a lot of players that have said their careers would be nowhere near where they are if it wasn't for Ron Washington. Marcus Semien owes him pretty much 90% of his salary right now.
He was instrumental, wasn't Steve Hatteberg bringing him in at first base.
Yeah.
And then I saw, I think it was something from Washington the other day where he's saying, yeah, they asked him how things were going. He says, well, they expect you to make chicken salad out of chicken shit. And it's like,
Right.
that's like you, though. I'm glad that I know the man gives so much of himself. And I'm glad that there was somebody around him. But the thing is, people need to respect not only the talent, the things that they've achieved, but what they're able to share. And if you're not going to take advantage of that, and if you're not going to respect that, you don't respect the game. And that filters all the way out through all of us, through fans as well. And
Don't you find it ironic that we live in a world where science is suspect everywhere unless it's about analytics?
yeah.
So true. If it's sports related, we'll accept it.
Oh,
And my friend Peko, the brilliant sports analytics babe, who knows more about it than all those guys in MLB put together, says, baseball is the canary in the coal mine. You can look at every field, every bad decision, every what? They did what? And say, this is what's going on. You may not know it, but these kinds of numbers and algorithms, this is what's deciding what your insurance rate is. This is what's deciding, who gets into what school. Some of it's visible to us and some of it's not. But her point, and it's a really good one to conclude on, is that the people who create the algorithms and do the numbers, they're geniuses in a way that I just cannot even fathom. How they've come to be able to create a cyber, strike zone that's going to function at all is just amazing to me. But as she pointed out, these guys don't have what's called domain knowledge. In the world of big data, domain knowledge means you know what you're talking about, right? You know your shit. Well, the data analysts often are people who are completely devoid of any knowledge of the context, the industry into which their work is being inserted. So they can't know why it doesn't make any sense for baseball, or why it makes football, by analytics, makes football more exciting and made the NBA go for the 3-point shot, which is now boring people, but has made baseball a worse game.
yeah.
And she said the really scary thing is not just that they don't have the domain knowledge, it's that they don't think it's necessary.
Yeah, they want the quick way out. That's essentially the way, it comes down. And
No, it's a belief in that in a system that is self reinforcing, and that is what's the word that I'm searching for, that it's whole and unto itself, and therefore it doesn't seem to need anything else. Doesn't or so when push comes to shove, I'll go with Peko.
Agreed.
Well, I thank you for that, Jane. We're talking with Jane Leavy and Make Me Commissioner. And dang it, I'm ready to ask Ron to go ahead and, Rob rather, to go ahead and retire early and bring you in now because God knows we need it. You've been a fantastic guest here. And there's so much more we could talk for. And I know that you probably could as well.
I'll come back.
Please. Good. Because
Can I ask you guys a favor?
please.
Could you suggest to people that if they buy this book, which I certainly would hope they would, but if they buy this book and they find something that they like about it, that they post reviews, because believe it or not, those reviews on Amazon and Goodreads really matter.
Okay.
I have like a lot of 5s and one that has brought down my rating so low. It's unbelievable. And I'm proud of it. It took 4 years. It was supposed to be an easy book to write. there are no easy books to write.
Yeah.
So that's okay. And there have been times where I've questioned, well, I've spent my entire adult life doing baseball, and in this world, I sometimes think I wish I had been writing about climate science when I got out of journalism school. Um, it doesn't matter in the world that we're living in. It's not going to help my children figure out what to do when it's 100 degrees every day. But it does matter because it gives people joy. And when we stop caring about giving people joy, then we've really surrendered.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us joy, and thank you for sharing all this. And I've already sent Kindle copies to other folks, digital copies of your book. So I will definitely make sure and I'll promote that as well. So there's so many great stories, people, in this we've just barely touched on. And so also we'll have to make sure we get the bot. Beat the bot game going.
You want to hear some? Okay, this is my last funny thing. My first reading, at the first reading I did, I got a note. Very often people will come in and say to a bookseller, would you get her to sign this for so-and-so because blah, 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 or in honor of so-and-so. I got a note saying, because you helped plan my aunt's funeral. And I went,
What?
what?
Jeez, Jane.
I didn't plan an aunt's funeral. And I'm like, where did that come from?
Good gravy.
It's very funny. And if that person had been there, I would have said, are we related? Do I know you?
Oh my. Well, thank you for
send you out with a laugh, right?
I love it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jane. It's been a true pleasure.
Take care, you guys. I love the backdrop there. I actually had one of me at Yankee Stadium, but given that I was late, I didn't take the time to, have it come in and look whatever.
Well,
anyway.
Thank Betty the dog for us too for giving us your time.
Now, where is Betty the dog? Oh, Betty the dog is taking a seat. Oh, there she is. There she is.
Hi, Betty.
She really can't see.
Oh, my.
Cannot see. I can send you pictures of her catching the ball.
Well, yeah.
Actually, check my website, okay?
Yeah.
I have a whole video travelogue of my year traveling through baseball with Betty the dog. It's kind of like Travels with Janie without the dog.
Okay. I'll look forward to it. Oh my gosh, I can't think of anything else except thank you so much, Jane.
My pleasure. I really had a good time. Take good care.
All right, you too. Bye-bye. Oh my gosh.
How do I opt out of this? Okay, where's the sign off? I think I'll go have dinner now.
There you go. You just...
Oh, there it has little leave. It's a new thing, leave in the corner. Good night.
We want to thank you again for joining us here today on Baseball Biz on Deck. We had a very special guest today, Jane Leavy, and talked about her book, Make Me Commissioner. She kind of takes us a journey through her love and joy of the game of baseball and what she would do to enhance the game even more so once Mr. Manfred retires in 2029. I know we enjoyed every bit of it, and we feel certain that you will too. You can find it on Amazon.com, Goodreads, and most bookstores. So thank you again for joining us here today on Baseball Biz on Deck, and we look forward to talking with you again real soon.
Just a reminder, you can find Matt at matgermain.bsky social. That's at mattgermain.bsky.social or Mark at baseballbizondeck.bsky.social. You may also find Baseball Biz on Deck on iHeart, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and at baseballbizondeck.com. Special thanks to XTakeRUX for the music, Rocking Forward.